We are on in the very end of 16a. Excuse me. The last two words. Bayirava. So we're discussing yesterday about the wall being attached or detached, taking objects from something which is attached. So that was two opinions. Can you take something which is attached and use it for shchita, yes or no? So Bayirava, going on to 16b, Talushul Basof Chibru Le'inyan Shchita Mai. You detached something and then attached it. Can you use that for shchita? We're going to try to bring a number of proofs. Tashma says the Bryce Hayatzur Yotzim in a Kollel, you have flint coming out of a wall. Now, what kind of wall are we talking about? It could either be referring to a wall of a building, which is something which was attached, detached, and reattached, meaning you took stones and you built a wall. And therefore, it says you can use the flint from that wall to do shchita, and therefore it'd be an answer to the question. Or a reed came out on its own. If you slaughter with these things, the slaughtering is invalid. So we say maybe that's a proof that what you cannot use something even though it's reattached. We said no, it's not a proof. Why? We're talking about the wall of a cave, which is still there. It has not been detached and attached, and therefore only such flint coming out of such a wall is invalid. However, our question remains unanswered. I'll show you that even it sounds like that it's referring to a natural wall, not a human-made wall, because it says Dekatani. What's the case that's similar to it is a Dekana Olam Elav is a reed that grows on its own. It sounds like the Bryce is talking about that things that grow on their own are invalid. So Shlamina, so when it says the wall, it's more logical. It's referring to the wall that's similar to the reed that grows on its own, and therefore you don't have a proof to our question. Yeah. Next attempted proof. Tashma na tzakin b'kosel v'shachat ba shchitasok sheiro. You have a knife put into a wall, and you slaughtered. That knife stuck in the wall, and you used that, and you slaughtered. So that is a valid shchita. So what do you see? A knife in a wall. It's attached now to something, and yet it's good. Says the Gemara, that's not a proof because even a knife is part of the wall, but it's not like nullified to the wall. It's not actually part and parcel with the wall. It's a knife that's stuck into a wall, but we're asking a question of something like flint sticking out of the wall. That's mamash. That's a part of the wall. A knife is not really part of the wall. So shiny sucking delay. That's not really like nullified to the wall and part and parcel with the wall, and therefore we don't have that. And therefore that's not a proof either. Third attempted proof, Tashma b'mechober lekarka shchitasok sheiro. If it's attached to the ground, then it's a good shchita. And that seems to be the end of the Bryce that we just quoted. So it sounds like if the and earlier we established this Bryce to refer to something that was attached, detached, and reattached, and yet we see that it's good. Says the Gemara, no, Dilma Prushka Mafarish Lamayim Mechober lekarka Sucking Dilma Vatale. Maybe when the Brisa says his case, it's not referring to a new case. It's just explaining the previous part of the Brisa, which was referring to a knife. And once again, a knife stuck into something is not considered like nullified to the thing itself. And therefore, we don't have a proof for something that is nullified, like a flint coming out of a wall that was attached, detached, and reattached. According to Rava, we don't have an answer. Now, it's interesting because on the previous daf, we had already two opinions about this. Rebbe said that it was, post facto, it was good. And Rabbi Chia said that it's even good ideally. But I guess Rava still had the question. He didn't hold of their proofs. Okay. Amar Mar says, Master, no, it's talking about you put a knife into a wall and you shech. The shechita is good. Anan says of Anam or Shmuel, it's only if the knife's on top, stuck in the wall, and the animal's under it. V'tzavar behema le mata. Aval sakin le mata, v'tzavar behema le mala. If the knife is below, animal's on top, it's no good. Why? We're worried. It's too much weight on the animal's neck. Instead of a good clean shechita, it's gonna be trampling. I mean, you're gonna push too hard. An animal's gonna push too hard on the knife, and it'll die through pushing too hard versus a clean shechita. It's interesting because we pointed out that you have to do a back and forth motion with the knife. We had a case where you threw a knife against the wall, then it bounced back and checked the animal. So according to this, that the knife is stuck into the wall. So is there back and forth movement? I don't know. Is there any wiggle room? If there is, then why is it considered stuck to the wall? And if there's not, then how are you shechting? I don't know. That's food for thought. Okay. But the Bryce seems to not differentiate. Even if the knife is on the bottom and the animal's on top, it still is going to be good. So how could that be? Aren't we worried you might come to trample the animal? Meaning you might come to, it'll push too hard and it'll die through that, not through shechita. Rav Zvid, what it means is litzdadin katani. What it means is that it's litzdadin, meaning this when the Bryce says that statement, both statements are not referring to the same cases. Rather, litzdadin means to the side. Each statement is referring to something else. So let's see what that means. Sucking lemata, if the knife is on the bottom, it's over behema lemala, and the animal's on top. That's talking about petolush, where the knife is not attached to the wall, and therefore you're holding it, and therefore we're not worried you might come to push too hard. But sucking lemala, it's over behema lemata, when the knife's on top and the animal's on the bottom, that's a case where the knife is stuck into the wall, and that can be kosher. That is Rav Zvid answer. Papa felt it's not so logical to split up the Mishnah as these phrases referring to two separate cases. So Rav Papa Amar be'ofa de Kollel. We're referring to a bird that's light. You're shechting a bird that's light, and therefore our worry of pushing too hard, that the weight going down on it, does not apply. Amar Chistam Rabbi Yitzchak Varmila b'masnisa Tana Chamesh Dvarim Namu b'kromis shalkana. There are 5 things that were stated with the membrane of the reed, meaning the reed, and they are the following: Ein shokten don't shecht with it; Ein molen don't do meat with it; Ein mechatchen ba, don't cut meat with it; Ein mechatetzin ba shinayim, don't clean your teeth with it; Ein mekachen ba, and don't clean yourself after relieving yourself with it. Oh, so now let's see. Ain't shokten ba really? It says that the Brisa says you can check with flint, with glass, or with this reed. So you're telling me I can't do it, but the Brisa says I could do it. Amar of Papa bisimuna de agma. It's referring to with the reeds you find by the marsh, the soft reeds you find by the swamps. Those are much softer. Those we should not shecht with. But the ones that are more sharp, of course, those you could shecht with. Yeah. The ein mechatchin ba basar. It taught us that you shouldn't cut meat with it. But it says Rav Papa would be mechatech ba kirvei dagim. Rav Papa would cut fish with these reeds. So the Gemara says they were dagim they were done the zigi. They were clear reeds. Now, one second. Second. Yeah, the problem is here that these reeds, they splinter. When you cut with them, they tend to splinter. So if one of those splinters is going to puncture the animal, that's going to be a big problem. Or let's say during a bris milah, God forbid, if a splinter goes, it can cause tremendous damage to the animal. So how did Rav Papa cut? So he said he was cutting fish that were transparent, and therefore, if you would have a splinter would have gone, you would have seen it. So Rabbi Rav Huna mechatika ufa derachich. So he would cut the meat with a reed that's soft, and therefore there's a smaller chance of a splinter coming in. It says ein mekanchaba, after one relieves themselves, should not wipe with this reed. It's very dangerous. So Shin of notros. So we're asking, there's another reason you shouldn't wipe, because the Gemara says anything, if one wipes themselves with something that fire, that's flammable, so then Shin of notros literally means your teeth can fall out. I think it's referring to one's intestines can fall out. It's very, very dangerous. What they point out is certain teeth-like tissues that support the rectum, and that is very dangerous. To which the Gemara says, Amar of Papa, Kinuach pi make kamrin. And when we talk the reed, so we're speaking out specifically talking about a wound. But specifically when you have a wound, you shouldn't use the reed because that's going to cause certain splinters. But when after relieving oneself, so one in general should use something which is flammable, because that could cause serious intestinal injuries. Okay, so now we had this cryptic statement of the Gemara, of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, "Akol shoktin ula olam shoktin." Everyone can shecht. You can always shecht. So what is that referring to? So hakol shoktin, hakol b'shchita, afilu of, that everything's included in the shchita, even birds. Olam shoktin. What's olam shoktin referring to? You could always shecht. What's that referring to? Now, the reason why we include a bird is because a bird's not included explicitly in the Torah for shechting. Animals are, a bird is not. So, now what does it mean, olam shoktin? Mantana Amar Rabba Bar Yishmael. Mantana Amar Rabba Bar Yishmael. Amar Rabba Rabbi Yishmael. This is referring to the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. And this is going to take us for a long time. We're going to get back to this. The Tanya, it says, Ki yarchev Hashem alokecha ezbucha kasher diber alach v'amar v'ochel basar. It sounds like the Torah is telling you that when God expands our boundaries, like he said, meaning when you get to Eretz Yisrael, then you're going to be allowed to eat meat for your enjoyment. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like until you get to Eretz Yisrael, you cannot just eat meat for your enjoyment. So Rabbi Shmuel Omer lo b'hakasav ella lahatir lahem pasar taiva. The pasuk's coming to allow us to eat meat as we wish. Now, what does that mean? Shebitchila nasar lahem basar taiva. Originally, well, at least when they were in the desert, the meat for enjoyment was prohibited. Mishenichnesu la'aretz hutar lahem basar taiva. Now that they entered into Eretz Yisrael, it was allowed. The achshav shegalu, but now that we're in exile, kicked out of Eretz Yisrael, yachol yachzur le'isur and harishon. You would have thought that they reverted back to their original prohibition. Lekach shaninu la'olam shokten. That's why our Mishnah says that you are able to shaft. One second. Yeah, now, when it says originally it was prohibited, it means that if you wanted to eat an animal, you had to bring it as a sacrifice, let's say as a shlomim, and eat that meat. Now, I don't know if it's referring to times before the desert. It's definitely referring to the times of the desert. What happened before that I don't know. Yeah, that I don't know what happened before then, but definitely in the desert, they were prohibited from slaughtering meat according to Bina Rabbi Shmuel. So when we said la'olam shoktin, it means you could still slaughter, even though it was originally when we were not in Eretz Yisrael, it was prohibited. Now it is permitted. One second. Yeah. Okay, Maskal of Yosef, Hayla Olam Shoktin. So he's bothered by this interpretation of the words in the Mishnah, La'olam Shoktin. So Hayla Olam Shoktin. So it should say La'olam Shoktin ve'ochlin. It should say if the main point was you're allowed to eat. So it shouldn't say you can always slaughter. It should say you can always slaughter and eat. Why doesn't it say that? La'olam Shoktin ve'ochlin mi ba'ilei. The ode and furthermore mikara my time itzer. Why originally was it permitted? It says here right now. My time it's mishum the Mishkan, because they were close to the tabernacle, and okay, and that's why it was prohibited to eat anything other than the meat of a sacrifice. One second. So as long as you're close to the Mishkan, so then you would bring up a sacrifice. You got to the soul, you were farther away, and therefore it's not going to be always practical to come from the Negev or the Golan to Yerushalayim to slaughter an animal. So, but why would you think that prohibition should apply even if you're not near the Mishkan? So, Mikar my time it's a Mishkan the Mishkan. It was so my time is true. The Havei Meraki in the Mishkan, when they were in Yerushalayim, they were much farther from the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore it's much more impractical to always have to come and slaughter. So therefore, the Kol Shekain Hashta, for sure nowadays, when we're much farther in the exile from the Beis Hamikdash, it for sure should be permitted, not prohibited. Hashta de Archiki Lehu Tvei. It should be for sure more permitted because we're farther from the temple, and therefore we should be allowed to slaughter. Therefore, he does not like the interpretation that we suggested, that La'olam Shoktin is teaching you a novelty that you could still shecht and eat in the exile. First of all, it should say shechting and eating. Second of all, there's more of a reason why it should be allowed, not less of a reason. So, Ela Amar of Yosef, our Mishnah is really reflecting the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. This is a very interesting opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, ki yirchak mimcha hamakom asher yivchar Hashem alkecha losum shmo sham v'zavachtem b'karcho mitzonecha. It says in Devar that when you get to the Beis Hamikdash, you're going to be slaughtering from you'll slaughter from your cattle, from your flock. So Rabbi Akiva understands this verse to mean as follows. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Lo ba'akasav ella le'eser lahen basar nechira. This verse which is the next verse of the verse that Rabbi Shmuel expounded, is coming to tell you that slaughtering basar nechira is an animal that's, instead of shechted properly, it's nechira, it's killed. It's by piercing it, meaning, let's say you have a way to kill it, to kill those instead of slaughtering the esophagus and the trachea, you have another way to do it. You could do nechira. You could maybe, I don't know, it's nechira to take it out, to rip it out, to rip out those signs. So that was at one point permitted in the desert, and now it's prohibited. So shebetchila hutar lehen basar nechira. In the desert, if you wanted to eat, you were allowed to eat, and you did not have to shecht. You could kill the animal without shechting and eat. Misha nichnasu la'aretz, it became prohibited. Once you entered into Eretz Yisrael, then it became prohibited. Nesar lehen basar nechira. V'yachshav shegalu, and now that we're exiled, yachol yachzu leheteir and harishon. Maybe you'd have thought we'd be revert back to our original status of allowing us to kill the animal without shechita and eat it. That's why our Mishnah says that we are allowed to slaughter. One second. Yeah. Now, I think there's a debate, even when you were allowed to, pierce the animal, strangle the animal, kill the animal in other ways. I think there's still a debate if you are bound by the rules of shechita, meaning you still have to cut through the two signs, the two pipes. Is it that you're allowed to kill it and not have to cut through the pipes? Or no, you still have to? I think that's a debate. But according to Rabbi Akiva, very interesting that you're allowed to kill an animal like that in the wilderness. Only when you got to Eretz Yisrael was that not allowed. Okay, so now that we mentioned these two opinions, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, we're going to now discuss what they're arguing about, and then go through a number of verses that seem to be scriptural supports for these different views. So once again, the Rabbi Shmuel says that that if you wanted to shecht in the desert, you can only do it by by slaughtering a sacrifice and eating it. Regular meat for your own personal consumption was not allowed. And Rabbi Akiva says it was allowed. It was even allowed to be eaten without slaughtering, even through this method called nechira, some kind of strangling, killing the animal through other means. So now, b'mai kamiflagi, what are these two opinions arguing about? Rabbi Akiva savar basar taivalo itzer klal. It was never prohibited to eat meat for your own consumption. Rabbi Shmuel savar basar nechira lo ishtri. Rabbi Shmuel says that piercing, strangling the animal, was never permitted. Klal, ever. Bishlam of the Rabbi Shmuel, who says you have to always do shechita. It's very understandable. It said you got to slaughter in the beginning of Vayikra, slaughter the young bull. You see, you have to slaughter. Makes sense. According to Rabbi Kiva, what does it mean v'shachat, that you have to slaughter? You don't have to. You could strangle. So we say kachim shiny. We say that kachim are different. That pasuk is referring to sacrifices. There, you always have to slaughter. You can't kill through other means, but meat for your own consumption, you could. According to Rabbi Shmuel, it's understandable that it says you can go and slaughter the tzonu bakar, the cattle in the flock. It should say that you don't have to shecht it. It should say you could pierce it, you could strangle it. That's fine. Says the Gemara, nechira shelahen zu yishkitasan. Yeah, when it says shechting it, what it means is their nechira was a way of shechting it. Shechting was just here translated more loosely as a way of killing it, but it doesn't mean shechting in a strict sense of the word. Yeah. Bishlam Rabbi Shmuel Hainu Detnan, according to Rabbi Shmuel, who allowed you to only shecht for sacrifices. Hainu Detnan Hashokim in this Nabal Biyado, the Mishnah said, if you shechted, and now the animal became an avelim, you shechted improperly, the Hanocher, the Hamaaker, Pater Milachasos. So the Mishnah is telling you about different situations when you have the mitzvah of Kisui Adam. When you have the mitzvah of Kisui Adam, but that's not going to apply when you slaughter it and it became an avela, or hamaaker, I think the signs, the pipes became uprooted. One second. Yeah, no servama'akir. It's not the different ways of tearing out the pipes. So all these cases, there's no kisui adam. There's no mitzvah to cover over the blood. But Ella the Rabbi Akiva, amai pater melachasos. Why would you be exempt if you didn't do shchita? Not doing shchita is fine. You could do nechira. So says the Gemara, hoil the itzer that. That once it became prohibited, so once the nechira, the slaughtering, became prohibited, meaning with the entering of Eretz Yisrael, so too there is no need anymore, no mitzvah to cover the blood by doing nechira, because nechira became prohibited. It was only by actual shchita. Now some for Rabbi Akiva's team. Bishla Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, who says, Basar Taiva lo itzer klal, that meat for your own wanting, your own desire, was never prohibited. So then the following verse is very good. It says, when you're going to go eat the deer, the gazelle, so kain tochlu, meaning those are things that you cannot bring as a sacrifice, but you could eat it in general. So according to Rabbi Akiva, it's very good. It was never prohibited to eat a deer or gazelle for your own desire. El Rabbi Shmuel, tziva ayel gufe miyavi shari. According to Rabbi Shmuel, one second, who allowed that? So that should always be that should have always been prohibited, because you can't bring those animals as a sacrifice. And if you can't bring them as a sacrifice, how are you going to eat anything? You can only eat animals that were fit for sacrificing. Says the Gemara, Ki asar achmana. So now, Rabbi Shmuel, who says that an animal is not fit for your own desire, only fit for the tabernacle, that's only true by a domesticated animal that could be brought as a korban. Ki asar achmana behema dechazi la'akrava. Aval chaya delo chazi la'akrava asar achmana. An animal like a deer or gazelle that's never fit to be brought as an animal onto the altar, that Rabbi Shmuel did not, he holds that was never prohibited. So really, we just brought the two opinions a little bit closer. That in the desert, the debate is an animal that's fit for consumption. An animal that's fit for a sacrifice, Rabbi Shmuel prohibits slaughtering for your own desire. However, an animal that is not fit for a sacrifice, such as a deer, that he will agree that if you want to shech that and eat that, that is fine. Go for it. Okay. Now, Bayi Rabbi Yirmiyah, he has a question. Rabbi Yirmiyah has a question A vari basar nechir shiknesu yisrael imahen la'aretz mahu. Limbs of an animal that were not shechted, rather strangled, which was, according to Rabbi Akiva, permitted in the desert. Now you brought those limbs into Eretz Yisrael. So you want to know, are they permitted or not? Do you say that they're permitted because it was killed in the desert? Or do you say, no, now you're in Eretz Yisrael, your only consumption has to be from animals that are slaughtered, not from strangled? So says the Gemara, when is your question being asked? At what point when they entered Eretz Yisrael? Amos, ilema b'sheva shekivshu. If it's during the 7 years when they were conquering Eretz Yisrael, so hashta davar tame ishtri lahu. At that point, even things that were not kosher were allowed because they were allowed to eat from the spoils of the land. Interesting. Ubatim aleim kol tuv. The pasuk says that the houses are going to be filled of all the good things. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav, Koslei dechaziri, basar nechir mibayi, that they were even allowed to eat there was even pig that was stored in their houses. 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, while they were conquering Eretz Yisrael, they were allowed to eat even pigs. Good trivia question. When were pigs ever permitted? So at this time, they were permitted. So what are you telling me? Limbs of a kosher animal that wasn't slaughtered but was strangled. You want to know, is that allowed during the conquest of Eretz Yisrael? Even pig was allowed during the conquest of Eretz Yisrael. So that, what kind of question is that? Of course it was allowed. No, we're asking after that. It's interesting because that was 7 years. So that means you have limbs of a strangled animal that somehow survived 7 years. So you want to know, is it a good refrigeration system during war? So you want to know, can you eat those then? So that was where the question's being asked. Or, no, maybe our question is during the 7 years of conquering, and you had a question that, well, pig was permitted for sure, kosher animal is permitted. To that we answer like this. The reason why pig was permitted wasn't because in general there was some kind of dispensation that non-kosher food was allowed. No, it was specifically spoils of the non-Jews you were allowed to eat. But we never said your own food you're allowed to eat. We never said you can just go and slaughter a pig or go and kill a pig and eat it. It was only the spoils that were found, those you're allowed to eat. But did who? Lo ishtari. Their own food that they brought with them, who says that was ever permitted? That we have a question that according to the opinion that says that it was permitted to eat meat that was not slaughtered, just strangled, can you eat this in those 7 years of conquering the land of Israel? And that we say, teku. Amar Rabba Shanisa Hakol Shoktim, Uli Olam Shoktim. So we had 3 cryptic lines in the Mishnah, Hakol Shoktim, Uli Olam Shoktim. And those you answered, Hakol Shoktim, you told us even a bird. Olam Shoktim, you told us, means that it's even meat that could be either for your own pleasure, or that it does not need to be, that it has to be slaughtered and not strangled. Bechol Shoktin, my Mishnisalei. What about the line of Bechol Shoktin? With anything you could slaughter. Now, maybe you'll tell me, you'll tell me that line refers to flint, glass, or reed. So to that we say, well, we want to be similar to the other parts of the Mishnah, which are referring to the actual food being consumed and not the items that you're consuming, that you are shechting with. So, iyahanach b'shoktin, hainami b'shoktin. V'yahanach b'nishchatin, hainami b'nishchatin. So, if they're talking about, if the Mishnah is talking about, the food being consumed, then let all the cases refer to that. If it's referring to with what are you allowed to consume it, meaning with what materials, it should all be like that. Don't split it up. El Amarava, like this. Hakol Shochtin, everyone's allowed to slaughter. It's referring to Chadala Suye Kuti. The Chadala Suye Yisrael Mumar. It's referring to a Kuti, the Kutim that converted, but only kept some of the mitzvahs, but were very meticulous in their slaughtering and not meticulous in others. The Chadala Suye Yisrael Mumar. And another would be referring to a Jew who's an apostate. La'olam Shoktan is going to be referring to Bein B'yom, Bein B'layla, daytime and nighttime. Bein Barosh Gag, Bein Barosh Hasfina, whether you're on the roof of the house or on the roof of the boat, right? That we said that we're not going to think that you're serving idols. B'kol Shoktan, and then B'kol Shoktan is referring to Bein B'tzur, Bein B'schuchis, Bein B'kromo Shalkana. It's referring to flint, glass, and the reed, and therefore it's all referring to who's allowed to slaughter, when you could slaughter, and with what you can slaughter, as opposed to splitting it up, that it's referring to when the food itself could be eaten, and versus with what can it be eaten. This is consistent. It's all referring to methods of slaughtering. Who's allowed, when you're allowed, and with what are you allowed. Okay, let's stop here.